Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the channel. I am Brian Lusk. Thank you for joining me today. A little bit of administration before we get started here. It's been a while since I've done a live stream. I've had a lot of real life things going on, including 9 days without internet as a fire actually took out my central office for my internet service provider. So it's been a busy couple of weeks, including a wedding reception, and just in general insanity with lots of crazy things going on. So I do apologize for the delay, the long gap between live streams, but let's go ahead and get started on what's going on in Ukraine. Got a lot of things to go over. For one thing, we've had a pause in aid, we've had a resumption of aid, we've had other things going on in the world. The Houthis have gotten more active again, attacking shipping through the Straits of Bab el-Mandeb. There was a ship that actually sunk today, not related to Ukraine, but of course something that's affected overall. There's been more attempts to put restrictions on Russian Shadow Fleet tankers and other vehicles associated with the Russian government. Ukraine actually managed to take out several aircraft on runways over the last about a week and a half ago. So again, we've had a lot of crazy things going on. Let's go ahead and jump into what we know is going on. In particular, let's look at starting with this is just from a couple of days ago. Some ships there was some sabotage on some ships in the Black Sea and the Mediterranean. And all of a sudden, Russian war bloggers suddenly went, oh, there's a war going on. And it's quite the shocking realization for people who've been referring it as the special military operation for so long. The first batch of Australian donated M1A1 AIM Abrams MBTs have finally arrived in Poland. This was from a week and a half, almost 2 weeks ago. So there's a possibility these Abrams tanks may already be in Ukraine and in use, though I'm not exactly clear exactly how much they'll be used in Ukraine. Hi, Jerry. Glad to have you on board as always. Thank you very much for joining today. Anyway, so having these additional Abrams tanks, it's good for Ukraine. The Abrams is a big beast, and certainly going to be difficult to use on the war fronts, the battlefields of Ukraine. But they've used them before, and they'll use them again. Maria Berlinska, the head of the Aerial Reconnaissance Support Center, offers 3 potential scenarios of how the war might progress from this point. First one, Ukraine might sign a peace agreement, getting security guarantees, and starts preparing for a new Russian attack in the future in hopes of making the price of a future attack too high. Second option here, go down a little bit, Ukraine loses some territory, but Ukrainian statehood remains, and the hybrid war continues, or irreversible loss of Ukrainian statehood. Ukrainians are forced to attack Europe as part of a Russian, Korean, Chinese army. That's none of those well, 2 of those options are certainly very bad. One is decent. Is about the best I can say about it. But these are the major ways that this conflict can end at this point in time. So something to keep in mind, at least to keep your thoughts on. So let's talk about Donald Trump and the cessation of military aid to Ukraine that happened kind of out of the blue. So let me give you some high level on this because there's been a lot of reporting on that. The various versions basically go along the lines of Elbridge Colby, who is a deputy Deputy Department of Defense over policy, I think is the correct title, or at least close to the correct title, forwarded a review of all aid to Ukraine, stating that the aid to Ukraine was actually operationally causing real problems for U.S. readiness. And Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth whipped his pencil on it, and wham, the aid stopped. Now, of course, Congress critters in Washington immediately started sending letters saying, hey, dude, what's going on with the aid here? And there was enough of a hue and cry in the public and in the press that Donald Trump literally said, I don't know what's going on. I didn't authorize that. They didn't ask me before they stopped the aid, which is concerning. But after a couple of phone calls with Putin and with Zelensky, Donald Trump said, no, we've got to send more, quote, defensive weapons to Ukraine after all. And Donald Trump actually described his phone call with Vladimir Putin as being a bad call. And that his following call with Zelensky, I believe 2 days later, was actually a very good call. And this is where things start getting interesting. So we got a bunch of things to talk about along this lines here. This is CNN, so you know this is a mainstream source, stating that Trump aides are discussing Ukraine weapons shipments on Tuesday after the president said the shipments will resume. Now, there's a lot of caveats and yabbits about this that we need to keep in mind. Hi, Lucille. Glad to have you on board as well. And you may be a little bit late, but we're not very far into things, so just relax. We're moving along. So, again, they're now going to resume aid, but there's some caveats involved. All the more, basically, Donald Trump said, Ukraine's getting absolutely plastered, beaten out there. They need more defensive weapons. And that's where things start getting interesting. Originally, the aid package that was sitting in Poland, ready to be transferred to Ukraine, had 30 Patriot missiles in it. Now, 30 missiles is not a lot of missiles, especially at the rate they're using them. So I'm not sure if that number is absolutely accurate, but the new promise is 10 missiles, at least according to reports. So 10 missiles is far less than 30, but certainly more than 0, which is what it looked like Ukraine was going to get. And apparently Germany actually approached Donald Trump to asking them to unblock the transfer of Patriot systems. Now, there's a lot of kind of, let's just say the reporting is murky, because some people are saying that Donald Trump said no more Patriot batteries are to be sent, just the missiles. Others say that Donald Trump, like this one from the Kyiv Independent, is actually debating sending another Patriot air defense system to Ukraine. So if he does this, this will be the first time he sends any aid that wasn't actually approved by the Biden administration. Of course, Dmitry Peskov over in the Kremlin absolutely went ballistic over this, saying that this does not contribute to peace. And, well, of course, from the Russian perspective, of course it doesn't contribute to peace, because Russia just wants to subjugate the people of Ukraine. President Zelensky, seeing this new messaging from the White House, instructed his Minister of Defense and the Commander-in-Chief to intensify their contacts with the Americans. We now have the necessary political statements, he said, and we must implement them as quickly as possible to protect our people and our positions. So this is where Zelensky is saying, look, the iron is hot right now. Putin and Trump had a bad phone call. I and Trump had a good phone call. It's now or never. We've got to get those contacts rolling in order to potentially make use of new aid, or at least the aid that they can receive from the U.S. Now, here's a brief video snippet from Donald Trump here.
We're not happy with Putin. I'm not happy with Putin. I can tell you that much right now, because he's killing a lot of people. And a lot of them are his soldiers and their soldiers, mostly. And it's now up to 7,000 a week. And I'm not happy with Putin. Okay, any questions? Yes.
Yes, sir. You just said that you're not happy with Vladimir Putin. Is there anything that you plan to do to act on that feeling of unhappiness?
Well, what are we telling you? Don't we want to have a little surprise?
So make of that what you will. I mean, we're going to have a little surprise there. Interesting. The real more interesting things are coming about in these later clips, though.
We get a lot of bullshit thrown at us by Putin, for you want to know the truth. He's very nice all the time, but it turns out to be meaningless.
Do you want to sanction him? Lindsey Graham has a sanctions bill on Russia. Do you want him to move
I'm
that
looking
down?
at it, yeah. No, I'm looking. The Senate is passing, and passed very, very tough sanctions. But yeah, I'm looking at
And
it.
you sign that?
It's an optional bill. It's totally at my option. They passed it totally at my option, and to terminate totally at my option. And I'm looking at it very strongly.
And by the way, that is the case. I mean, the long story short on the sanctions bill that is currently, or at least supposed to be in front of the Senate tomorrow, I believe is correct, will have it basically gives Donald Trump the option to implement additional sanctions. It doesn't direct Donald Trump to do so. It gives him the option. He can implement them or not as he feels necessary. You can have your opinions on that. I'm not going to address it at this point in time. Then there's this little snippet right here. Let's go ahead and pop over
It's
to it.
killing too many people.
Mr. President, you have sent more weapons to Ukraine, as you said last night. Last week, the Pentagon paused some shipments of weapons to Ukraine. Did you approve of that pause?
We want to put defensive weapons because Putin is not, he's not treating human beings right. He's killing too many people. So we're sending some defensive weapons to Ukraine, and I've approved that.
So who ordered the pause last week?
I don't know. What did you tell me?
I don't know. Why don't you tell me? Well, that's concerning. We'll just put it that way. Definitely should have a greater amount of either control or communication in his administration. Now, there's been some responses to this, and some of it's negative. A lot of that negative, of course, is coming from the Kremlin and their bots, but there's plenty of negative coming from native-born Americans, as well, as they have decided that they are against all aid to Ukraine no matter what. But let's talk about that for a moment here. I'm going to be going through a quick post. I'm going to try and make this pretty quick, from Megan Mobbs, talking about this decision to arm Ukraine further. I'm seeing posts attacking the president's decision to arm Ukraine, claiming they didn't vote for this. Well, I did, says Megan. Megan voted for strong American leadership. I voted for peace through strength. Supplying weapons to Ukraine isn't charity, it's strategy. And yes, it's exactly what an America First president does. Here are just some of the ways. Countering Russia protects American security. Russian aggression in Ukraine threatens the stability of Europe, a key ally and trading partner. A stronger Russia, emboldened by victory, could destabilize NATO, forcing the U.S. to spend more on defense or risk direct confrontation later. Arming Ukraine, of course, just kind of moving off script here. Arming Ukraine has the effect of pushing Russia back and giving them a bloody nose or a black eye, hopefully with the goal of getting them out of Ukraine entirely. Number 2, boosting the U.S. economy. I'm going to just summarize this. Basically, if Ukraine is buying U.S. weapons, U.S. manufacturers are employing U.S. employees to build those weapons and send to Ukraine. In addition, there's the rest of the material in benefit to the U.S. military of sending our older hardware and then replacing it with newer, more capable hardware today. Number 3, reinforcing global leadership. An America First approach doesn't mean isolationism. It means leading on terms that benefit the United States. Arming Ukraine showcases American power and reliability, reassuring allies like Poland and the Baltics who host U.S. troops and buy American weapons. It also counters China's influence as Beijing watches how the U.S. supports its partners. A Ukrainian victory strengthens American diplomatic clout, ensuring favorable trade and security deals. And number 4, moral and strategic credibility. Supporting Ukraine showcases America as a defender of sovereignty and territorial integrity, principles tied to the America First movement. Ukraine's fight against Russia's unprovoked invasion aligns with America's values of self-determination and resistance to tyranny. All of these are good things, and I think that Megan's overall post is excellent. I'll go ahead and just drop it into the comments here so you guys can read it at your leisure. But overall, if supplying weapons to Ukraine and counters both Russia and China, China has recently stated outright that they do not want to allow Russia to lose in Ukraine. Because if Russia loses in Ukraine, the Americans will redirect all of their resources against China. So defeating Russia outright allows us to refocus on China, a true global enemy, for lack of a better term, at least a true global foe at this point in time, one who is very much interested in seeing American influence and power wane. And this one from me: if anyone is still claiming that Putin wants peace, they should be ashamed. Putin wants to subjugate and win. As long as he sees that as possible, he'll keep going. And this is coming not just from me. Newt Gingrich, of all people, mentioned this in basic summary. Putin is making it very clear, he said, that any truce in Ukraine will come only when he, meaning Putin, is defeated. We talk, he kills Ukrainians. We talk some more, he kills more Ukrainians. And of course, Newt Gingrich has got quite a bit more to say there. Let's see if we can pull this open. He has openly said he wants to destroy Ukraine, and that is his war aim. A combined Ukrainian, U.S., European effort will be needed to defeat him badly enough that he wants a ceasefire. Until then, he will keep lying and killing. All right, so that's kind of the overall, kind of the background moving into the rest of the stream today. Let's go ahead and talk about what's going on in Ukraine. Another massive drone attack on Ukraine. There's been several, including ones that are up to over 500 drones and missiles. And it's been ramping up in many ways over the last several weeks. The more Donald Trump talks to Putin, the more Putin bombs Ukraine. President Zelensky has signed sanctions on Chinese firms whose parts were found in Russian drones used to attack Ukraine. There have been quite a few Chinese companies that are providing components to keep Russia in the drone business. In fact, General Syrskyi reports a 1.6-fold rise in Russian missile and drone strikes on Ukraine over the past month, with Russia boosting troop numbers and accelerating missile and drone production to support its ongoing war efforts. Now, here's one of the things that tells me that things are not necessarily going well for Ukraine, at least on a budgetary perspective here, and understandably so. The European Union is urgently seeking ways to cover Ukraine's projected $19 billion budget deficit for next year, with options including off-budget military grants, early disbursement of loans, and further use of frozen Russian state assets. That means that Ukraine is a country at war, and they're fighting a much bigger opponent. And so there's some serious budgetary concerns that are going on as they invest. I believe it's over 34%, going from memory, of their budget, of their resources into fighting back against Russia. Ukraine has also launched a new digital procurement system that is basically, as they call it, a weapons marketplace. This enables frontline units to directly order drones, electronic warfare tools, and more with just the minimum amount of bureaucracy. Basically, they can get the tools they need at the prices they can afford effectively, and get their equipment faster with less red tape and quicker. Ukraine has ramped up their drone production by 900% over the last year. They're now manufacturing over 200,000 drones per month, according to Defense Express. That's a huge leap in capability. They're investing a lot into making these drones. Now, one other thing that tells me that there is some trouble on the battlefield at this point in time is that Ukrainian forces are building two massive defensive lines 20 kilometers back from the front lines, including thousands of small positions and obstacles and anti-tank ditches and things like that. Now, this matches the overall field of Russia basically throwing meat wave after meat wave at Ukraine, and Ukraine having to save their lives with a little more territory each time. Now, there are some positives and some negatives going on. We'll talk about that when we get to the front lines. Then there's this little story that caught my attention and was not just from this is actually a Ukrainian government source here, but I've seen this from multiple others. Two guys traveled to Ukraine, to Kyiv, and put on swastika shirts and began walking around Kyiv, basically showing off their swastika shirts. And of course, holding the swastika flags and things like that. Well, this appears to have been arranged by Russian FSB agents. So these two were arrested immediately, and this could carry a 5-year prison term in Ukraine for wearing or displaying Nazi symbols. As of a few hours ago, this is referring to tonight, more than 200 Russian drones are in Ukrainian airspace. Now, this was as of about 5 hours ago, well, 4.5. So those drones have probably impacted, and we have not heard the results of that yet. But understand, each night, waves of drones are impacting various cities across Ukraine. Not just on the front lines, but the capital cities. The rear line positions, every civilian is at risk from Russian drones. On the other hand, Russia is certainly not afraid to recruit people on dating sites. They arranged through this dating site to try and get this Ukrainian woman to blow up a hotel. And of course, Ukraine's SBU found the person and arrested them before it could happen. And that's kind of the news out of Ukraine. Let's talk about the news out of Russia. Lots of things going on, lots of things blowing up, I'll tell you honestly. And I can't even address them all because many things have happened over the last couple of weeks. Now, this is an interesting story piece right here, and it looks like it's not the first time this has happened. Troops from Kaliningrad have been redeployed from Kaliningrad to actually help on Sumy and other frontline positions in Ukraine. Now, Kaliningrad, in case you aren't familiar, and I'll just be brief here, is a Russian exclave. It's basically a little piece of Europe that is detached from Russia, but is controlled by Russia entirely. It is considered part of Russia. So Kaliningrad has a gap called the Suwalki Gap that they have to move all their supplies through if they're going to do anything like that or bring it in by sea. Of course, the Suwalki Gap is now being guarded much more heavily because if the Russians can close that gap between Belarus and Kaliningrad, they can cut off the Baltics from NATO reinforcement. And that would be a very powerful first step in trying to absorb the Baltic states yet again in a new offensive into Europe. But by moving those troops out of Kaliningrad and into frontline positions in Ukraine, it indicates that Russia's having some trouble keeping themselves staffed for it. Now, make no mistake, they have been boosting their defenses on the European border there quite heavily lately, bringing troops back, or at least putting new troops into those positions. So we're watching this with a great deal of concern. Here's a larger source on that, pulling troops from Kaliningrad. This is a recent one. This is a one from June 26th. They also pulled troops back in 2024. So there was a variety of articles that were mixed all together. So overall, this appears to be more troops being pulled from that area. On the other hand, one of the places that Russia's getting their reinforcements are from children in Ukraine, as in the occupied areas. Hundreds of Ukrainian teenagers aged 14 to 17 have been taken to be retrained to become soldiers for Russia. On the other hand, this is actually, as of this morning here, a warehouse is on fire in Russian Rostov. No reports on exactly what was in this warehouse, but it was actually a very merry blaze, you might say, because In a short time, it moved from 2,200 square meters to 9,100 square meters in just less than an hour. So it's really a merrily burning warehouse over there. We don't know what's in it, but it burns well. So Solovyev has finally said, noticed the fact that there's still Ukrainian troops in Kursk. Not a large percentage. It's a very small piece of Kursk at this point in time. And of course, there's another spot where Ukraine has moved forward near the Tolkino area. But overall, he's basically saying, okay, who's going to bear the personal responsibility for letting Ukraine in and then not kicking them out? Well, the one who should accept all the blame is Vladimir Putin, but he don't take blame. On the other hand, Russia's still testing their new combat drones. Here's the Altair or Altius U. It crashed into a residential building in Kazan during testing. Here's the results of that. Now, this drone is about a 10,000 kilometer range drone with a 24+ hour endurance, and it is intended to be kind of the equivalent of the American Reaper MQ-9. They did declare this test to be successful, so apparently blowing up a house in Kazan is considered a successful test for Russia. There have been a variety of government officials who had a nice long step out of the window of their 11th floor apartments. Many of them lived on the 9th, 8th, or 7th floors, and it's not really clear how they got to the 11th floor. This is one of the authorities that was just arrested was just this former deputy head of Russia's National Guard, Viktor Strigunov, and he has reportedly been arrested due to corruption linked to military training in Siberia, meaning he's been stuffing his pockets while not actually providing the equipment necessary. Ukrainian drones struck 2 buildings at the Azov Optical Mechanical Plant. This is a facility that produces precision optical mechanical components for missile guidance, armored vehicle stabilizers, aviation, and drones. This is an important plant. My understanding, though, is it was the administration building, not the production plants that was struck. The Ukrainian drones also hit the Krasnozavodsk chemical plant in Sergeyev Posad district of Moscow region. This is also another defense sector industry here. The Russians have been complaining about the frequent disruptions to their flights into Moscow, St. Petersburg, and Nizhny Novgorod. They're having to cancel hundreds of flights each day and delay more as more drones keep flying into Russian airspace. And they're saying, why in heaven's name haven't you fixed this problem? And ironically, the transportation minister was the one who was taking the blame for this, and he resigned from his position. The next day, he had a nice long step off of an 11th floor balcony. So this appears to be the purge going on in Russia. Now, this is just, I'm kind of addressing things that I've researched that are related to this right here. There's been so much going on, I'm just kind of touching on things as I go here. In fact, here's that Russian transport minister that was dismissed due to the transport collapse at Russian airports. Now, you wonder why Russia bothers to go into Ukraine. They should have everything they need, right? Well, they're now announcing that they're producing lithium-ion batteries based on lithium deposits in Ukraine. So they've begun mining some of those lithium deposits behind the front lines and using them to make their own batteries. Of course, Ukraine is still making sure that Russia's oil industry is, shall we say, has a lot of attention paid to it. There's another fuel depot destroyed in Komi Republic. Now, this is from today, earlier this afternoon, at 22:50 local time in Crimea. 3 loud explosions were heard from Simferopol airport, and after that, the power went out completely in the village of Bogdanovka near Simferopol, according to a subscriber to Crimean Wind. No reports on what was hit or what was done, or if it was even enemy action at this point, as in Ukrainian action. We will just have to wait to see what's going on. And this one, I just want to quickly address the last paragraph on from Defense Intelligence of the UK, an intelligence update on Ukraine. While deeply rooted corruption that exists within the Russian Ministry of Defense significantly undermines the effectiveness of the Russian military, the goal of Russian authorities is almost certainly not the eradication of corruption entirely. Such behavior is fundamental to the functioning of the Russian regime. Instead, Russian authorities are likely seeking to limit corruption to more manageable levels that have less impact on the functioning of the department. Basically, they want the right amount of corruption, enough to keep things under control, but not so much that it impacts their operations. The problem is they have allowed it to get so out of control that they're actually losing based on the corruption, not really based on the actions on the battlefield. From Ursula von, we're going to international material right now. From Ursula von der Leyen, we know that China's unyielding support for Russia is creating heightened instability and insecurity here in Europe. China is de facto enabling Russia's war economy. We cannot accept this. That's because overall China has seen that the West is not supporting Ukraine. They are not going all in to make sure that Russia is knocked back. So why not support Russia? There's no downside for China to support Russia, and we've not provided one as of yet. Russian Minister of Parliament Andrei Gurylev hints that, Member of Parliament, MP. I'll look that up later. I don't feel it tonight. Andrei Gurylev hints that Russia might soon attack Poland. And he says the Poles are seriously reinforcing the border. It's obvious why. They screwed us over. If they did, should they get hit? They should, and they know it. Sooner or later, we'll punish them. Again, Russia wants to subjugate anybody who is opposed to them. This was an interesting story here that I've been kind of catching vibes from. I don't really have good information on it. The long story short is that Germany keeps returning illegal immigrants from Germany to Poland. And it appears that Poland has allowed Belarusian migrants to go through Poland to Germany, and so Germany is sending them back. This is a pressure point, one that could fracture the NATO alliance or the European alliance. So we're watching this one with serious concern. Moving over to the Bab el-Mandeb there, over in the near Yemen. The Houthis have once again, the last time they struck a ship was in November 2024. After almost 7 months of quiet, they have once again begun attacking shipping in the straits there. They have sunk this ship here, the Magic Seas, and they attacked it. They then boarded the ship and then placed detonating charges in it. Yes, they did ram the ship with a couple of speedboats with explosives on them, but they overall ended up just boarding the ship, which is already abandoned. The crew had abandoned ship before the Houthis ever got onto the ship. So this is they're continuing to cause more problems in that area, and we're going to have to deal with them sooner or later. A lot of shipping goes through there. The French have announced that they are doing another round of sanctions called the toughest sanctions against Russia since the beginning, and they're doing it in coordination with U.S. senators. So we'll see how that turns out. Now, here's one that I've caught from a couple of different sources, and I'm still waiting good, solid information on it. But I've seen it from enough sources, I believe it to be accurate. A Chinese military ship targeted a German aircraft in the European Union with a laser deployment. Now, there's no report on the power or the nature of the laser attack, the results of it, just that a laser was deployed against a German aircraft. And I'm still looking for more information on this one. Still, this would be hostile action against a foreign power by the Chinese. So what's really going on here? we already know they're on Russia's side, and Germany is clearly on Ukraine's side. Is China getting more kinetically involved or working on it? We'll see. Russia is using its ties with Chinese firms to skirt sanctions. No surprise there. They've been doing that for a while. Czech arms manufacturer Excalibur Army announced on Tuesday they're opening a representative office in Ukraine, to which it will supply its products from 2022. The Czech company has modernized 100-plus tanks for the Ukrainian army. They're basically putting a sales office there and probably working on a production portion there as well, because that seems to be the plan overall. Now, moving kind of into the realm of more personality than necessarily direct news, Elon Musk's father made a visit to Russia and is telling Elon Musk to make a visit to Russia. Then, of course, he goes into anti-Ukraine screed there, talking about the artificial borders of Ukraine and annexed territories have been reunited with Russia. This is concerning just because of the nature of the people involved. So keep that in mind. You think that Russia's not at war with the West? 3 men were found guilty of setting fire to a London warehouse containing equipment for Ukraine, but they were acting on orders from Russia's Wagner PMC. Russia is working on hybrid warfare, anything they can attack that might even vaguely be related to Ukraine. We saw a similar event over in Germany, a warehouse full of equipment that was burned. So Russia is at war with us. We need to get serious about it. Now, this is an interesting aside here. I've seen this now from several sources as well. Laos is reportedly sending a military unit to Ukraine to fight on behalf of Russia. So that now makes it Russia, China, North Korea, and now Laos, and Iran, of course. They're drawing more nations in to their war of aggression because the West is acting weak. Why would Laos not participate? It's clear that we have some work to do here. Russia has declared Yale an undesirable organization, according to the Prosecutor General's office. Yale is justifying the funds allocated to discredit Russian government bodies. Ukraine will be replacing their ambassador to the United States. While she's been very effective and they call her very charismatic, I understand that's actually true. That's just she's due to be rotated. And so they're rotating her out for another diplomat. And Rotterdam Port prepares for NATO arms shipment amid the Russian threat. Basically, they have a commercial port that they are now designating a special berth for military use. War. Going to be a lot of it. It's heating up hard. Let's talk about what's going on the front lines. I got a bunch of just various things to talk about here. Czech President Peter Pavel has warned the war in Ukraine could last for years if it continues unchanged. Ukraine can hold key positions, but the prolonged conflict is unacceptable for all. Then there's this item from Andrew Perpetua. He's translating Fighter Bomber's post. Now, Fighter Bomber is a Russian propaganda source, one of the mill bloggers. And he's talking about combat aviation. Now, he claims that Russia has gained effectively air superiority in parts of Ukraine, and that they are doing even more effective attacks on Ukraine because of it. Now, the sheer number of drones would indicate there is some truth to what he's saying. It's not, however, all true. The end result, though, is still that there is a real war going on in the skies for who can actually maintain actual control. Some of it's localized, some of it's temporary, some of it's just flooding the whole zone with everything you can throw at it and hoping that some of it gets through. For instance, here's a Ukrainian Su-27 striking a gathering of Russian drone personnel and drones in Luhansk. So clearly, Ukrainian aviation is able to operate in enough sufficient activity that Russia does not have air superiority or air dominance in all areas of the front. Another thing that happened over the last couple of weeks is Russia entered the Sumy region. And for a while there, they made a fairly significant amount of gains. And then Ukraine fought back and they started pushing Russia back. The latest there is that the Russians captured Andriivka, but now they've been pushed back out of Novokonstantinivka and, of course, Andriivka. The Ukrainians are moving on to continue pushing the Russians back out of that region, out of Sumy. Here's a mechanized assault near Novoekonomichne in Donetsk region. Man, I butchered that one, so I apologize to all Ukrainian speakers out there who might listen to this later. A Russian column of 3 vehicles advanced from Mirolyubivka toward the town, with 2 units managing to breach the outskirts. One dropped off infantry, the other pushed deeper, but were ultimately destroyed by Ukrainian forces. Another grouping of Russian assault troops attempting to advance near the village of Hlybok in the Kharkiv region. Hlybok is near the front lines, but is still not in Russian control. The Russian summer offensive is underway. They've now activated the Zaporizhia front along its entire length. They've made minor gains across several parts of it. We'll talk about that later. And according to Wargonza, who's a Russian source, the Russians have driven the Ukrainians out of Kamenskoye. But the thing is, you then read a little bit farther and you realize that they're showing video from the center of Kamenskoye, but they report that they do not have control of the north part of it as of yet. So Russians like to report captures that they have not actually completed yet. And again, Wargonzo, their report with Zaporizhia, they're saying that they are making clear, basically making clear advances in Zaporizhia front. Donetsk, they say they're developing in several directions. This that means to me they're not making much progress. The way they say that there, little information, he says, from Chasiv Yar, and that means that they're having trouble getting communication from that area. Sumy, they're claiming that they are able to cut off the Ukrainian forces' ability to attack Tyotkino. We'll see. We'll see. I am still watching Sumy closely to see what kind of comes out of it. Ukraine Control Map reports that the Ukrainian forces have retaken Kondrativka in Sumy as well. The Institute for the Study of War says Ukrainian forces had recently advanced in northern Sumy Oblast amid a series of ongoing counterattacks. So again, we're seeing that the Russians are attempting their assaults. They make a little bit of progress. The Ukrainians bottle them up, push them back. Russians may still manage to hold some of the territory, but they're being pushed out of their deepest advances. And let's take a look at the deep state map here. We got a few things going on. Here's the Sumy region here, and this is today. Let's back it up a few steps. No changes for some days here. I didn't think there were, but I thought I'd double check. The interesting part's over here near Kharkiv. Right here. There we go. I knew it was around here somewhere. In just the last couple of days here, the Russians have managed to cross the border here in basically open area near Milova. That's the border town that they've been talking about. Now, Ukrainians appear to have been making some progress in this area as well, but I'm not sure they have the forces in the area to effectively contain this one just yet. A little bit of action near Dvorchina here. Dvorichna, there we go. But it's been some days and just small gains in this area. Not a lot going on over in these areas, even near Bakhmut and Chasiv Yar. They claim that they've made some progress, but it's all been down near the Toretsk area. Just little itty-bitty advances all across that area. I think there was something near Velika Novosilka here. Yeah, just some more kind of open areas captured. And over here in the Zaporizhia front, kind of zoom in a bit and kind of see where the Russians have done some capturing of open territory here as well. And that's kind of the front lines on the broadest scale. and kind of the main meat of what we're talking about today. Let's go ahead and catch some interesting extras here. So before I do want to say thank you for joining me today. Know that you don't that there's lots of other people who are able to do more regular updates on Ukraine. That you come here says a lot, and I appreciate you being here. So, interesting extras over on X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it this week. Russians have been battling the Grok AI, who they've been getting into lots of arguments about the facts of the special military operation and the situation in the Donbass region since 2014. And Grok's basically taking them to school here, taking them behind the woodshed and introducing them to a whooping. It's providing facts and information here that is basically the facts of the situation, and the Russians don't like it. For a while there, Grok was pretty pro-Russian in the way its information had landed on the platform. Now it's basically taken the Russians to the woodshed. This is a post from me, although I was quoting Thomas P., and this is not related to the war in Ukraine, but this is the form letter that was shipped out to various countries from the White House, basically saying, here's what you're going to pay in tariffs. Now, tariffs, I'm not going to go into who pays for tariffs. Just understand that foreign governments don't pay tariffs, at least not in the way that Donald Trump states. But the letter itself is poorly written and not very well. It's just not good. The thing is, and my post says, we have for over a decade now had our government run by incompetence. This is just one more sign of it. Ally, enemy, doesn't matter. Here's the copy-paste letter that tells you what you're going to do. Apparently, business acumen doesn't scale to country governance. We're running a prosperous nation into the ground. And we'll end off with this, and I'm choosing this specifically for a reason. One of the things you often hear, those who are against Ukraine assistance, well, why don't they say thank you? Have you ever seen the things that the Ukrainians say about American gear? Here's Defense of Ukraine. The M2 Bradley infantry fighting vehicle is a true battlefield all-rounder. Mobility, firepower, and troop protection. These are the three pillars of the Bradley's effectiveness in modern warfare. Its 25mm M242 Bushmaster cannon can penetrate most enemy vehicles and even tanks, firing single shots or devastating bursts at up to 500 rounds per minute. The advanced optics systems give a crystal clear view of targets up to 10 kilometers away. Its fire control system is like a sniper among guns. A powerful diesel engine pushes the Bradley to speeds of up to 66 kilometers per hour, allowing for rapid maneuvering. You don't say those types of things about equipment you don't like and people you don't like. This is Ukraine saying thank you, not with flowery words or fancy letters, but by saying how impressed they are with the things they've received. This is a warrior's thank you, not a politician's thank you. And that's everything for today. Thank you very much for joining me this evening. Glad to have you here. If you are new here or just haven't ever been here before, hit that old subscribe button. I'll be trying to get more regular content up here. It has been busy as all get out for me lately, as many can likely attest. Just understand that just because I'm busy doesn't mean I am forgetting about what's going on in Ukraine. I often watch the news and everything going on around Ukraine and wish I had the time to talk about it. But even so, to the soldiers on the front lines, my heart goes out to you. To the civilians being hit daily, whose rest and sleep is being interrupted night after night after night. Keep your spirits up. You are on the right side. And in the darkness of despair that likely comes in these moments, God is truly on your side. He just needs to kick a few people to get them to help out. And that's everything for today. Thanks you again. You have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you on the next video. Sorry you're so late to Ozzy, but glad you made it anyway.